Hello and welcome to the Slate Breakdown. I'm Big Italy 42. As you know, he is Denny Carter at CD Carter 13. Going off your article here, we're talking about all the games this week, who you're targeting, who you're not, games obviously to target, games to avoid, things of that nature. Obviously, we're going to skip the first game, so that already happened. And if you didn't play Rob Gronkowski, that's on you. No one else to blame but yourself there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to start off here with Buffalo Bills against the Indianapolis Colts. Starting off at 1 o'clock, of course. 46-point total here. Colts a small favorite. They've got a 25-point team total here. So why don't you give me your favorite? Because obviously everyone knows Tyrod Taylor going to be the popular play where he's cheap. You know, he's the glue to fit your GPP rosters. But are you one of the people that's going to play wide receiver with him? Or are you playing him solo? Or what's your plan here?
Yeah, I mentioned in the article in the Slate breakdown that if I'm stacking anybody with Tyrod, Ty God, as I call him, it's Charles Clay, his tight end. They displayed some chemistry in the preseason. Clay caught all 4 of his preseason targets for 95 yards and a touchdown. I know that's a small sample, but he was productive in Miami. He's always been a nice red zone threat. And really, I mean, with Vontae Davis scheduled to, cover Sammy Watkins, and with the lack of real pass-catching options in that Buffalo offense, I think Clay is he's like bottom basement type tight end play that I think has a pretty decent ceiling. His floor is scary, but that's why you're not playing Clay in cash games.
Yeah.
You're playing him with Taylor in larger formats. So. I do like Clay against that Colts, a Colts defense that is not expected to be dominant outside of Vontae Davis, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great call. I mean, like you said, Clay's the guy that's been effective over the past few years. He's been efficient for a cheap play. And obviously with no Gronkowski, you don't have the decision of pay up or pay down. I mean, it's pretty much a pay down and pick your favorite player this week. So,
yeah.
What about the Colts side? I know a lot of people be on Andrew Luck. I personally am not. It's a really tough matchup for him. I mean, that front seven is pretty tough, one of the tougher in the game. So, Andrew Luck, a complete avoid for you?
Yeah, I don't right now. As of Saturday afternoon, I have no Andrew Luck shares in daily.
I don't either.
I just he's so expensive. He's on the road. He's playing a legit defense. Okay, like this defense last year, I think was allowed the third fewest top 12 quarterback performances. Now, I'm not saying that Andrew Luck is not going to be a top 12 quarterback tomorrow, but that's not what you're looking for when you invest in Andrew Luck. Okay, so as great as Luck was last year in cash games, I mean, you just plug him in, if you forget about it in a lot of circumstances, this is a really ugly matchup for him and the whole Colts offense. I can't really see a scenario in which I would want to play Frank Gore anywhere. Especially news this weekend that he's supposed to be on a snap count, to start the season. I don't like Andre Johnson at his price especially on DraftKings, and T.Y. Hilton is just kind of a meh option for me this week. So I just think that they're going to have pretty high ownership. And I think that they're also an easy fade, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there. I mean, there's no reason to force guys, especially their prices, Hilton and Luck, into your lineups in this bad matchup in the first week. So I'm with you there. Next up, a game that does have a lot of appeal. The Green Bay Packers against the Chicago Bears, if we can even call it a defense, because this was a terrible defense last year. You don't expect it to be much better this year. And I mean, I'm looking at this Vegas total, the line, right around 7 points, and I can't even fathom a scenario where the Bears keep this one within 7 points. So, I mean, you've got, of course, Aaron Rodgers, arguably best quarterback in all of football, missing Jordy Nelson, but you got the obvious play of the week. So, since you and I already know it, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone the one player they're going to have?
Yeah, Eddie Lacy. I mean, Eddie Lacy is he's going to have Pat Thorman from Pro Football Focus had this great phrase about Eddie Lacy this week, that he likely will have positive game script for days.
Yeah.
And that's what we look for when we look for a really safe running back option, is a guy who is going to have the game flow in his favor. And even if like you're talking about scenarios in which Chicago wins, even if Chicago somehow seizes a lead, I like Lacy in that passing game still. Yeah. So, I don't think that he'll be dependent on the Packers getting a 10-point or a 14-point lead. and just pounding away at what should be a really weak Chicago front seven. So he's just as safe as they get, and pretty on DraftKings he's really reasonably priced.
Right.
So I mean everybody likes him. He's going to have huge ownership, but I just don't see a way to fade him in most cash formats.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with his versatility, I mean, it's 9 straight regular season games that he has at least 100 total yards. So even when he's not productive on the ground, like you mentioned, especially DraftKings with a full point PPR, he's got tons of upside and a nice floor. So obviously from this one, Devontae Adams, I don't know where I came up with Davis. Devontae Adams going to be very popular as well. Filling in now in the number 2 spot behind Randall Cobb, who's going to take over. And Cobb may not be 100%, but looks like he's good to go. So obviously, I think he's more of a GPP play, not a guy I'm going to be paying up for in cash, though. How about you?
Yeah. You're talking about Cobb. Yeah, no, I agree. And I just want to mention, talking about defense running back stacks this week. I mean, I don't know if there's a better stack than the Green Bay defense and Lacey. Jay Cutler over the past 3 seasons has averaged an interception and a half per loss. So he's really bad in losses, in the Bears' losses. He compiles a lot of yards and decent touchdowns, but we're looking for turnovers. And we all know that, Smoke and Jay will turn it over when he's down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we saw some of these games in recent years with these two teams, even when the Bears were a better team with Brandon Marshall. I mean, just absolute blowouts. So this one, definitely, you imagine that Jay Cutler is going to be throwing the ball, but can't imagine a whole lot of production on that side. So I won't be targeting any Bears guys. And I'm with you there. I mean, that defense running back combo is one that's definitely overlooked. And I know you're a big fan of the streaming defenses and things of that nature. So I'm a huge fan of that as well. I mean, Jay Cutler on any offense, and I'll be looking at that defense in some regard.
Yeah, Cutler has thrown 7 interceptions in the past 4 games against Green Bay. So
yeah. Add some more to that list tomorrow, I'm sure.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Next up, Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. Just a 41-point total here, so not a whole lot of offense expected. Obviously, Arian Foster out. They said months, then they said weeks. Now they're saying possibly next week, 2 weeks, but obviously none of that matters this week. Alfred Blue, I mean, he's a volume-type play. He's not a guy that has a lot of upside, not a big play threat. So, I mean, if you need a filler, I think he's an okay option. But he's not a guy that, I mean, we've all seen this guy run. He's nothing special. He's just going to get a lot of opportunity.
No, he's just like a big, slow, upright runner. I mean, I guess what you're hoping is that the Texans somehow get the ball on the 1-yard line and he falls into the end zone and it tacks on a touchdown onto his 50 yards on 15 carries.
Matt Asiata style. Just snake the goal line carries.
Yeah, it's an Asiata play. Yeah. You're right. And just to mention one guy that I have some interest in at his price, Jeremy Maclin. It's pretty clear that he's going to be a centerpiece, maybe the centerpiece of the Chiefs' offense this year, and he was used a lot in the preseason in various ways, from the slot outside. They talked about him lining up in the backfield sometimes. Not that he's going to get carries, but it's just interesting to see that kind of usage. Andy Reid knows how to use this guy, and Houston. Let's see, only 10 defenses allowed more passing yards per game than Houston in 2014. So the Texans' secondary is not exactly stout.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen the big play threat that Jeremy Maclin is, and obviously that was the big key piece that the Chiefs were missing last year, as they didn't have a single touchdown to a wide receiver. Got to imagine that doesn't last very long this year. So Jeremy Maclin definitely the guy, but outside of that, really nobody's standing out in this one. Low total, no reason to target a bunch of guys here.
Yeah.
Next one up, not a whole lot of excitement here, but I know one player in particular that I'm looking at. Jacksonville Jaguars against the Carolina Panthers, 42-point total. Panthers a small favorite, projected to score 23 points. And obviously with Kelvin Benjamin out, got to imagine Greg Olsen was already over 1,000 yards last year. He's the guy that was already a big part of the offense anyway, but you got to imagine he takes on at least a little bit more of a role in this one. So he's probably the main target from this game. What do you think?
Yeah, who has worse starting receivers right now than Carolina?
It's a bunch of Big Ten rejects now, pretty much.
Yeah, they're really. I mean, that's a really bad situation. And just to get this out, I mean, Cam. I don't understand how you could play Cam in this one or going forward, really, except for great matchups, because I think his upside, his ceiling is just so limited right now. But yeah, I mean, Olsen. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would be pretty stunned if he didn't see 10 targets tomorrow. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like him at the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know you mentioned one other guy, Jonathan Stewart, as a guy here who, we saw for years and years. It was he and D'Angelo Williams. You decided who you thought would have a big game that game. And, it was kind of a back and forth. But obviously, D'Angelo Williams is gone, and now all of a sudden successful in Pittsburgh, at least till Le'Veon Bell comes back. But what's your take on Jonathan Stewart here?
I mean, if you believe the Vegas line, the Panthers are favored, and so if he has positive game script going his way, the Jaguars' opponents last year ran the ball 31.2 times per game in 2014, which is a lot, as you know. I think it was that was top three. So Stewart is in the running for 20 carries. I actually think that Jacksonville's defense will not be terrible this year, and they actually weren't bad at the end of last year, except for that they're constantly put in bad situations by their offense. So, but I've been high on Stewart in redraft leagues, and he's right. His price is right this week. I'm playing him as a pretty safe cash option in week one.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if the volume's there, then that opportunity itself is going to put some guys in play there. So.
Right.
Next up, the Jets against the Browns, two of the teams that nobody really likes to target that much. Only a 40-point total, no surprise there. Jets a small favorite, 22-point total for them. And, I mean, there's really not a whole lot that stands out in this one at all. I mean, you've got some options now finally for the Jets as far as wide receivers. You've got Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. So, I mean, what's your take on these Jets wide receivers? Because Ryan Fitzpatrick, we know nothing special as a quarterback, but he's an adequate option at times. So, are you playing either of these guys?
Well, Joe Hayden is supposed to cover Brandon Marshall. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that makes me a little bit hesitant about going in on Marshall, although I still think he'll see volume. Decker is pretty cheap, and Fitzpatrick is, like you said, not fantastic. But I like this about Fitzpatrick. He'll give his receivers a chance, especially big receivers. He has a history of just letting them go up and get it sometimes, and I think that's what Decker is good at. And Marshall is nothing right now in his career but a possession receiver. He's got not I don't think he would beat you and me deep right now. No. And Decker has that deep ball prowess still, and so I see Decker as a good option. I'm not really stacking him with Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I think that the only stack in this game that intrigues me at all, and just barely, is the Jets defense and Chris Ivory.
Yeah.
Because if you think that it'll be a blowout, which I think it might, then Ivory's going to see quite a bit of action.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, especially that DraftKings price, which kind of seems is the theme of the week. A lot of guys really cheap there, but Chris Ivory really cheap there. So I'm with you there. I think he's a guy you definitely have to target. And that Cleveland offense, I mean, they don't have any offense, any options really. So I mean, targeting the Jets are an above average defense. They're not a great defense, but in this sort of matchup against a bad offense, you got to keep them on your radar at least.
Yeah.
Next up, St. Louis Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, 41-point total. Another one of these close games. Seattle favored by roughly 4 points, depending on where you look. So, I mean, obviously we know the Seattle defense, best in the league, or most talented in the league, depending on where you're looking. So, the Rams are a team that, I mean, it's a bad offense, and you got a lot of good cornerbacks, a lot of good defensive backs, good everything on that Seattle side. So, I mean, are you looking at anyone on either side of this one outside of maybe Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson went nuts against the Rams early last season, and I think maybe people will remember that, and maybe play him here. But the thing about that game was that the Rams got a big lead, and Wilson had to let it fly and run all over the place for 3 quarters. I mean, he had 3 quarters of just trying to churn out points and yards. That's not likely here. I think especially because the Seahawks defense is playing against Nick Foles, and Nick Foles is so prone to turnovers, fumbles, interceptions, you name it, and so I don't see Wilson as a very appealing play. I don't know in any format. I don't have much Russell Wilson this week. Let's put it that way. I do sort of like Brian Quick because I read that he was supposed to stay out of the Richard Sherman zone,
It's always a good place to be.
And he's a nice right, and he's a nice deep threat. And Nick Foles, the one thing he does pretty well is throw a nice deep ball. And that's why I like Quick. Longer term throughout the season. He's a decent GPP play, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, it's another one of those game script things because unless Seattle does get down big, which you don't anticipate is going to happen, that's not their style of offense. That's not Russell Wilson's game, so don't expect that. Here comes another really bad defense from last year that didn't really improve at all in the offseason. Washington Redskins against the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins, small favorite in this one. One of the sexy picks, one of the preseason darlings, and a guy that people are high on this week and into this season's Ryan Tannehill. Pairing him with Jarvis Landry, things of that nature. Obviously, Lamar Miller is a guy who was kind of a thorn inside the side of some DFS guys earlier last season, but second half was good. So obviously, you're not targeting a ton of guys on the Washington side because that entire team is just a big mess. But on the Miami side, though, there's definitely some appeal.
Yeah, so Washington was bottom 5 in completion percentage given up to opposing quarterbacks last year. They gave up. They weren't giving up big chunks, but they were giving up consistent, high percentage throws. And Tannehill that's kind of his game. I mean, he's not a deep ball. His deep ball actually is terrible. So so he's over the middle. He's throwing within 10, 12 yards of the line of scrimmage. So I just think that really fits there for me. If you look at that, Jordan Cameron is supposed to, according to Tannehill, according to Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator in Miami, Cameron is supposed to be the main red zone threat this season. And while he may not see a ton of action between the 20s, if you're looking for touchdown upside at tight end. I'm not sure, and if you besides Gronk, obviously,
yeah, of course,
I don't know if there's a better option at a really reasonable cost than Jordan Cameron.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, like you mentioned in your article here, 6'5", 262. He's a tough cover for any of these defensive backs here in the red zone. So it's going to be one of those guys that not a lot of people are talking about. So definitely an under the radar type of tight end play for you there.
Yeah.
This one definitely has some appeal on both sides. The Cardinals against the Saints, 49-point total, one of the higher ones on the weeks. Small favorite for the Cardinals, 26 points. Saints projected at 23 there. So this one, definitely chock full of some goodness. Drew Brees seems like a guy that no one's really talking about. He doesn't have quite as many options as he had before. Obviously, Carson Palmer coming off another knee surgery, and he has some weapons. But looks like Michael Floyd, what I saw this morning, looks like he's on track to play. They're expecting, but obviously nothing confirmed. They said that game time decision, but it seems from what I was reading, maybe he's on the right side. So assuming that he plays, if you got to pick one of the two quarterbacks, who do you like more?
At the price, I love Palmer in this one. I wrote about him in the column, and I actually think that he is a decent cash game play because I see his floor is so high in this one. I don't expect the Cardinals to attack the Saints on the ground, and with sort of the ascendancy of John Brown, and in the preseason at times last year when Palmer was healthy, I love that Brown Palmer stack in this one. The Saints secondary is banged up. The Cardinals are at home. They're projected to score 26 points. I think that is that's got to be my favorite stack this week is the Palmer Brown.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, and we also have seen, it's somewhat narrative based, but we've also seen, Drew Brees plays a lot better at home in the Superdome than he does on the road throughout his career. So, I mean, obviously nothing significant there, but certainly a guy that you could look at. And you mentioned Brandon Coleman with Drew Brees there. That's a guy that, I mean, a lot of the casual DFS players don't even know who that is. So, that's an under radar kind of
and Coleman is impressive as a prospect, 6'6", 225. He's not going to get probably a ton of looks, but in a game that in which the Saints might have to throw quite a bit, if you want to go super contrarian, that Breeze Coleman stack. I mean, Coleman is at the minimum price, I believe, on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So I think that he's a guy who poses as a nice red zone threat who could see some volume in a game that I expect to be pretty high scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vegas definitely agrees, up near 50 points there. Next up, Chargers and the Lions. This is a tale of two teams that are a lot different from last season. Chargers and a 46-point total, slight favorites here. This is a Lions defense that's missing some big names from last year. Obviously, Ndamukong Suh is gone. They added Haloti Ngata. Just, I don't expect this to be anywhere near the defense that it was last year. It was a great defense last year, top five, depending on what you're looking at here. And the Chargers, I mean, their lack of a running game over the past couple of years, hopefully, they're hoping at least Melvin Gordon is the answer to that. Obviously, you've got still not a great plethora of receivers, a lot of pretty good guys, but no one go-to guy here. So what's your take on this one? Who are you looking at here?
Just on the Detroit side, real quick.
Yeah.
I think that Calvin Johnson's injury woes over the past couple seasons, and just the fact that he's been a top guy for so long has kind of made him passe. Like
Yeah.
we just think of where I hear a lot this week about OBJ and Dez and Julio and AJ Green, and hardly anything about Calvin, who we used to talk about as like the play. Like you have to get Calvin in your lineup, and he's apparently healthy, completely healthy. He's not going in dinged up at all. I'm not saying that he's going to stay that way, but in games last year, in which Megatron was not a decoy, so he was a decoy in about 2.5 games last year.
Yeah.
He saw 12.9 targets in those non-decoy games. That's a lot. Even if you don't think Stafford is very good, which I tend to agree with, Megatron seeing 12.9 targets is awesome. And the Chargers secondary doesn't pose a great threat, I don't think. I mean, they're not bad, but they're also not fantastic. So Calvin is, like, strangely to me, kind of a contrarian elite receiver play over with all the buzz about those top 4 or 5 receivers on the on DraftKings and FanDuel right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, if you average that over the season, you look at the guys who are the most heavily targeted, I mean, that would put him at least in the top 3. I mean, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but I think it was Demaryius Thomas right around 185. So, I mean, He'd be right there as most targeted receiver in the game.
Yeah, and another thing, the stack generator on Daily Fantasy Cafe has the Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers stack as a top 20 stack, and while that's somewhat encouraging, I think that it's a top 20 stack with top 10 upside. That the Detroit secondary was not good last year at all. I mean, I think it was masked. It was nicely masked by the fact that their front seven was brutal. Yep. Against teams, put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Destroyed running games throughout the season. But without that front seven being that elite unit, I think that they could easily be exposed here.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And then the whole Joik Bell, Amir Abdullah situation, seems like Bell's healthy. He's going to be the starter. Abdullah, obviously, they're mixing in. I'm not going to be involved in that mess at all. I don't know about you.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, it seemed like Abdullah would be like, an awesome week 1 play because he's so cheap. But it's one of those situations that I think where daily fantasy types, we want to see Abdullah get 15 touches. I mean, we desperately want to. Will it happen? I mean, probably not. At least in my estimation, the team is not just going to bench Joik Bell. I mean, he's not going away, so that's inconvenient. But I don't have much Abdullah going this week.
Yeah, I mean, even as they brought in Reggie Bush, we saw. I mean, Joik Bell's the guy, and Joik Bell's like the high floor type of guy. Abdullah, we're anticipating at least is going to be the high ceiling, but unless we know something concrete about the touches, there's no way that I'm going to be heavily involved in that.
Yeah.
Another high total here, but an interesting one. The Broncos against the Ravens. 2 defenses that, depending on who you ask, they're good defenses. They're not good defense. They're not as good. 27-point total for the Broncos. All these reports coming out this morning talking about how people think that Peyton Manning has finally reached that point where he doesn't have the arm strength anymore, which probably hurts guys like Emmanuel Sanders more than Demaryius Thomas, I would assume, because Demaryius Thomas, a lot of those wide receiver screens, short passes, things like that. So Peyton Manning's not a guy that I'm playing at all this week. I don't imagine he's going to be highly owned. But how about for you? Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I have any Peyton this week, and that's strange. I mean,
it's really weird.
It feels weird. So that makes me, that just kind of makes me think that it might be decent to throw in a Peyton here and there if you want to capitalize on what should be some low ownership. But quarterbacks hit a wall. His comps for this year are not good. I mean, like if you look at quarterbacks at his age with his experience of his profile, it's kind of a hit the wall time. Saying that, I find it hard to just say no. You cannot. You're not playing Peyton. The one playing this game that I'm really interested in for GPP purposes is Crockett Gilmore from the Ravens. I think all off season we were thinking Max Williams would be starting tight end for Baltimore, but it's absolutely Crockett's gig.
Yeah.
I mean, the coaches unequivocally say, this is our guy. He's not a fantastic athlete, but he's a giant. We saw some chemistry Flacco throwing to him during the preseason, and that offense is actually really good for tight ends. So in a game that could see a lot of points, it's 49-point total. Ravens are projected for 22. I think that Gilmore, and he's minimum priced. I think that he's as good a tight end punt play as there is.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen Joe Flacco before rely on tight ends, so obviously it's not even far fetched to think that. Obviously, guys like Torrey Smith out of town now, so he's missing that target. So definitely plenty to go around. C.J. Anderson's going to be another guy that's popular in this one, and like you mentioned him in your article, of course, especially. I mean, well, I guess aside from whether or not Peyton Manning is himself or whatever it may be, C.J. Anderson still figures to be a huge part of this offense.
Yeah, Anderson last year was good no matter what. It was good when the Broncos were down, when they were up, when it was just back and forth. Gary Kubiak loves the workhorse. Loves the workhorse back. We've learned that time and again. It's part of the reason Arian Foster was so appealing when Kubiak said, "This is my guy." You knew what he meant. This was 5 years ago, but you knew what he meant. And he has said the same thing about C.J. Anderson. I really like that guy throughout the season. In that offense, in that blocking scheme, and he's really good through the passing game too. So in the times when the Broncos get down, and perhaps Peyton's arm issues will make the Anderson screen game more appealing in that offense.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with guys like Lodi Nada being out there, obviously he's not the player he once was, but still was a fixture on that line for quite a while. So maybe a little bit more, maybe a few more holes for the running game there for Denver. All right, next up, the Raiders at the Bengals, 44-point total. Bengals 24 points. Raiders projected for 20 there. So this is an interesting one because, well, personally, I'm a Bengals fan, so I'm going to let you give me your take. Obviously, A.J. Green's had some monster Week 1 performances recently. Yeah. Nobody can rely on Andy Dalton, but all the weapons are healthy now. Tyler Eifert's back, Marvin Jones. So, obviously, Jeremy Hill's going to be a popular pick, too, because he's really cheap, especially on DraftKings. We know he's going to get a high volume. So, what's your take here?
Well, we all know that Dalton is usually really bad against good defenses and really good against bad defenses. Yep. And, that's what you have here. I mean, Oakland's secondary is a disaster. I mean, truly a disaster. And so I have a stat in the column this week. While Dalton only scores 16.5 fantasy points against top 10 secondaries, he averages 20.1 points against bottom 10. The Raiders are bottom 10, and Dalton is pretty cheap. So I know it kind of seems old fashioned now, but the Dalton Green stack is pretty good in this one. I have to say. So I really like him. He's and for those streaming quarterbacks in redraft leagues, I love Dalton as an option if he's on your waiver wire. The emergence of Tyler Eifert is big here for Dalton. Because as good as A.J. Green is, he's not a red zone monster. He's not this big physical guy who's going to dominate in the paint. Eifert can be that, with his size, with the way he plays. So I think that's great for Dalton.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen Dalton before. He had kind of a rapport with Jermaine Gresham a few years ago where he relied on him, but he proved to not be quite as reliable as, DFS owners, whoever had expected. So definitely, I mean, we've seen plenty of times Dalton just throw up a prayer for A.J. Green and Green bails him out. So Even when Dalton's bad, Green makes him look good. So I like that duo a lot.
Yep.
Next up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tennessee Titans, 41-point total. This one a close one, but a low total, 22 points for Buccaneers, 19 for the Titans. This is the battle of the newly drafted quarterbacks, Mariota versus Winston. And this is one interesting play. Some people are high on him. Some people don't want anything to do with him. It's Doug Martin. We saw a couple years ago had his breakout season, then struggled. But, I mean, he was dealing with some injuries. They had kind of a crowded backfield. Sims was getting some time. Saw these guys, Bobby Rainey, a lot of guys. So what's your take on Doug Martin this week?
Yeah, it's we have to draw some conclusions and use some methodology that we don't love for week one, DFS, because we don't have anything to go on except for preseason and then last season and then reports, and Doug Martin, by all accounts, is the guy, is the early down back for a team that probably won't be very good, but for a team that's favored at home against a really bad Titans team this week. So I don't know. I really love Martin at his price. I mean, it's hard to get cheaper for what could be a guy who gets 20 touches in this game. Talking about running back defense stacks, given the price of these two, I love the Bucs defense and Martin together. I like Mariota. His offensive line is leaky at best. He's on the road in a hostile environment to start his career with a receiving corps that is not great. I mean, Harry Douglas and Kendall Wright are not fantastic. So I love that Tampa defense Martin stack in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, very little weapons, and also, I mean, this is the Titans defense. It just got shredded by running backs last season, so definitely a great spot for Martin, even with his cheap price. So just a whole lot going for him there. Next up, Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants. This is one of the better ones on the week, 52-point total. Expected to be fairly close. Cowboys favored by 6 points. Obviously, Cowboys are a better team, but a much different team from last year. You got the whole running back committee back there. Whatever your take, anyone's take is on that. That's not a situation I love this week. But, of course, Romo, Des Bryant, you got Eli Manning and Odell Beckham. I mean, a lot of offensive weapons in this one. And then you've even got some role players, especially on the Giants side here, too.
Yeah, just for the record, the stack generator on Daily Fantasy Cafe likes the Romo Des stack a whole lot more than the OBJ Eli stack. I'm not saying that OBJ and Eli stack is not good. I mean, I have that in a lot of places.
Well,
but
you and I could throw to him.
Yeah, right. And so it seems like we should be playing.
Yeah, right. A couple of these games at least.
But yeah, so the generator has Bryant and Romo at 41.1 points and OBJ and Eli at 35 points. That's a pretty big difference. So I tend toward to go toward that Romo Bryant stack, but I along with that Romo Bryant combo, I really like throwing Ruben Randall in there, because if that Romo Bryant stack goes off, and I think they will, Randall could see a lot of targets. The Giants have to go to the air. Victor Cruz is not expected to play. Ruben Randall shockingly saw a ton of targets last year, by the way. I think he saw like 115 targets, which
quietly,
is
too.
Yeah, it's just surprising for a guy who just didn't do much until he decided to play late in the season. I think that was one thing that's worth focusing on, is that he was going to be cut. He was about, they were talking about cutting him, and he turned it on and was legit for the last 2 or 3 games of the season. So I really like just tossing Ruben Randall in there along with Dez and Romo.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great call. I mean, if you're the Cowboys, like you mentioned, you got Odell Beckham. You worry about stopping him. If Ruben Randall gets you underneath, whatever it may be, you deal with the consequences with that. I mean, I feel like that's probably the way I'd be going if I'm defensive coordinator there.
Yeah.
All right, next one, obviously a very popular game. Everyone's going to be all over this one. Going to be a lot of money changing hands on Monday night with the Falcons and the Eagles. 55-point total. I'm sure you've noticed by now that's the highest total on the week. Eagles 29 points, Falcons 26. Both teams up there as highest total on the week. So take your pick with this one. If you look on Twitter for about 2 seconds, you're going to see tons of mentions of Sam Bradford and Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. I mean, there's a lot of options here. Jordan Matthews is another one. So obviously you're targeting this game. Everyone's targeting this game. So how high are you on Julio compared to everyone else?
Um, Fairly. I don't think that he's like a must play. I don't see him as a whole lot better than Des Bryant for this week. But I mean, it's really tempting, and I have this in a few GPP lineups where I have five guys from this game in one lineup because I think the 55. I don't think you can make the over under high enough in this game. I mean, I think I wouldn't be shocked if they just eclipse 60. And Bradford will be a very popular cash play. I think that we've seen that. And I can't disagree. I just in that offense. I mean, we saw Mark Sanchez post top 10 and top 12 numbers last year in that Chip Kelly offense. Yeah. It's a really quarterback friendly system. So even if you think Sam Bradford stinks, and I understand why, he has new appeal in this offense, especially surrounded by the weapons that he has. I mean, Jordan Matthews, DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, who I think could, in a game like this, in a back and forth game like this, he could see double-digit touches in this game, giving him some tournament appeal. But some stacks in this game that I love. I love Bradford, Julio, Matthews. That's one that I just can't get away from right now. The stack generator likes that a lot too. So this game, you should really have pretty high investment in this game, especially on kind of the cheaper plays. Leonard Hankerson could be, and Roddy White, who struggled with injuries, and people will probably be off of him because it's a little scary, an old dude struggling with injuries to start the season.
Yeah, and I mean, not a whole lot of wide receiver depth for Atlanta either. I mean, Devin Hester's been ruled out now too, so not that he was a big part of the offense, but in a high-scoring game where you're throwing a lot, he would have gotten involved in some regard, you imagine. So definitely more to go around there. Well, a little bit more, I guess. There, that is.
Yeah.
Final game on the slate here, 41-point total, the 49ers against the Vikings. And this one's interesting, and you pointed it out here as well. It's like this is the 49ers defense that was good, but they missed a ton of pieces now. So a lot of people see 49ers and they avoid things. But I mean, you got Adrian Peterson, who is arguably the best back in the league, based on opinion, of course, talent-wise at least. But against a defense that a shell of its former self. So I think he's a great viable option. I know there's some other guys in this game as well.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about Peterson, and I know, like I wrote in my column, like some rules don't apply to Peterson, but the Vikings, according to Pro Football Focus, were a bottom 6 run blocking unit last year, and now they're shredded on the offensive line. That just doesn't. I just don't think that bodes well for Peterson, who was out all of last year, is old for a running back. I get it. I get that he's a cyborg and everything, but I think I feel like if you're going to pay up in week 1 for a running back, I'd much rather have Lacy. I would much rather have C.J. Anderson than Peterson. And then just getting back to the Niners, I mean, Colin Kaepernick, I think will have his appeal this year. I just don't know if it's here. I don't see much appeal at all in this game. And running quarterbacks need game script on their side to utilize both the running and the passing parts of their game. I don't expect that here for Kaepernick. I think that he'll have to drop back and pass a lot, and we know how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to drop back and try to pass at least. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, this one of the lower totals on the week. Last game on the slate, so not a bad one to avoid, like you mentioned. If you just have no exposure, you can just see everyone else struggle with their roster spots there in a low total game. So,
that's
all right. Thanks for hanging out with us there. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. We got a lot of other great content. Get you ready for NFL Week 1, all the other weeks at dailyfantasycafe.com.